Welcome to the arena. My name is Greg Sindelar, and today we're joined by a very special guest, my longtime friend and mentor, Brooke Rollins. Brooke, welcome.
Thank
to the
you.
show.
So good to be here.
So we're going to try to keep this under 3 hours today. But this will be like an insight for people. We've had so many conversations over the years. Like it's like people inviting them into all these like car trips to the airport and stuff that we used to do.
Yes, exactly.
But, you know, the purpose here is to talk to people who are out there fighting for liberty across the country. Obviously, you've been doing this for a long time, and kind of understanding their story and what they kind of see for the future of the country, the future of the conservative movement. But maybe starting, why don't you tell us a little bit about your story and what made you want to get involved in public policy?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, and it's so fun. This is very official.
Way too
years.
Professional for us, right?
Exactly. I'm a little confused.
We don't have any A&M banners around here.
I know. Where are the Aggie banners? Come on.
I'll fix that, Jefferson.
Come on, Jefferson. You know, my story, I think, is special in the fact that it's not special, and the fact that America is a country where kids that grow up in towns of 1,200 people on the plains of Texas, who don't really know what their path looks like, but know that anything's possible, and getting a scholarship to Texas A&M, and my time in the Future Farmers of America really kind of changed the trajectory of my life, which is a pretty amazing thing to think about and say. I graduated with 39 people in my high school class from Glen Rose High School, and most of the kids stayed and are still there and still good friends of mine. I felt like I was going to the other end of the world when I moved to College Station, which was just 2.5 hours away. Yes, but for me, it was the really big town. And that's kind of where it all began. And fast forward, you know, I was in the last White House, which probably some of your viewers at least know, but ending up in the last West Wing with Donald Trump was never on my dance card. The West Wing or Donald Trump, to be honest with you. But that's where I ended up. So from Texas A&M to law school at a small law school here in Austin. I can't remember the name.
School.
Yeah, I can't remember the name right now, but it was very small. But a great legal education. And then to a law firm and a clerkship, which honestly helped me. I was an agriculture major undergrad, so I had not really had that analysis education. So all these years later, I look back and think about how actually incredibly beneficial that was. Then to a law firm, then to a clerkship, then to Governor Rick Perry, brand new Governor Perry, as his deputy general counsel, but quickly moved over to the policy shop, which is where my heart always was, and stayed there a couple of years. My goal was always to be a stay-at-home mom, and my husband and I were ready to start a family, and so I decided to step away from my job at Governor Perry's office and in the Capitol, and that lasted about an hour, and I got a call asking if I would be interested in this position at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. And Greg, you know the story, but at the time, I'd never even heard of the Texas Public Policy Foundation.
Seems like a problem if you're working policy.
If I was the policy director for the governor of the state of Texas, it's like, well, we've got nowhere to go but up here. Yeah. But I had I agreed. We didn't have a family yet, planned to stay for a year. And 15 years later, looked up. And as you know, because you were a major driver in the build of TPPF to become, I believe, the most effective think tank in the country, especially recently under your leadership, that maybe it isn't that surprising that I ended up in the West Wing working for President Trump for 3 years, and then left the White House, planned to stay for a second term, at least for the beginning. I had kids that had to get back to school in Fort Worth, but really wanted to get that second term moving, and really give President Trump the second term. The first term he really didn't get because it took a couple years to figure out the deep state and what we were up against. But when that didn't happen, at least contiguously, we decided, you were part of that decision tree, that launching and building a Texas Public Policy Foundation at the national level Was nothing I wanted to do, frankly, or planned to do. We'd kept my office here in our
We're
TPPF
ready for you to
building
come back. That's
for
right.
3 years open. But I think we all agreed that the country needed it. And if we had any chance of saving America, to expand the model of TPPF and the state of Texas and governance and governing to the rest of the country was an absolute. So here we are.
Here we are. Well, I want to get into all of that. So but I'm going to go back a little bit to your A&M days. And you were probably a lot of people don't know this, but you were the first female student body president at A&M. So what caused you to run for student body president? Because someone who went to A&M, I know what a endeavor that is to take on. And then two, what did you learn about that? What was the thing you learned the most that made you say, like, hey, maybe being in this world and being in the political world is something I want to do?
So I kind of go all in, which you know well, on everything that I believe in or love, and for the people I believe in and love. And I was an agriculture scholarship kid at Texas A&M. Right? I was not generations of family. I had never been to a football game. I just got a Future Farmer of America scholarship to study agriculture at Texas A&M, which sounded great to me, and showed up. But the minute I got there, Greg, and you know this, the decades of service and patriotism that school represents, it was an all-male, all-military school until the late 60s, early 70s. So even though it's a huge university, and was even when I was there before you, the concept and idea and the feeling of being an Aggie and being something bigger than yourself and loving your country and fighting for your country and ultimately being willing to sacrifice everything, your life for your country, that's what I learned at Texas A&M, which you don't hear many other schools, other than maybe the military academies, that have that. And so I fell in love with being an Aggie. I fell in love with Texas A&M. It's not perfect, but now looking back, I realized that my heart, once I find something I really believe in, all I want to do is make it better. And how can it be better and better and better and even better? And so without probably being able to articulate that 30 years ago, this year when I ran for student body president, 1994, I think that was the driver. I looked around and I thought, this place is so special. And someone said, well, you'd be the first female. And I said, well, that doesn't matter. Even back then, I was completely unfocused on anything like that. I'm like, who cares?
I love that.
But a lot of people said that it wouldn't happen or it couldn't be done. And I just knew if we had a really good campaign and really good people and we had a vision for the university, which at that time was more parking spaces, cheaper textbooks, and more student leader opportunities. I think those were my 3 planks.
Would earn my vote.
Well, right. During those moments, that was like the single most important thing in the world. Yeah. And we ended up winning that race, I think 60-40, which when I heard those numbers come back the night of the election, I'm like, well, why didn't we win by more? And someone said, well, Brooke, that's kind of considered a landslide. I said, well, we only won by 20 points. It should have been a lot more. But it was an incredible experience. And it taught me, which I still use today, perhaps more than anything else, to always surround yourself with the very best people that make you better, that are smarter than you, that are better than you at whatever you're doing. Just surround yourself constantly, have a vision, and also have fun. And that's kind of, I think, carried, as you know, through the last 25 plus years of being able to do this amazing work that we get to do every day.
Yeah. It's got to be fun. Otherwise, why do it? It's a duty.
Yeah, I don't understand all these people that are always sad and depressed and in a dark place. I'm like, go do something else, right? This is not 1776. We are not having to march across a frozen river without shoes on at the risk of probably dying. Our fight for freedom is important and game-changing, but it's joyful at the same time. And that's, for me, what I've really tried to do through my life.
Yeah, I love that. Well, so you took over TPPF in 2003. As you said, it's kind of a new organization to you. It had been around for almost 15 years at that point. But can you talk a little bit about what TPPF was like in those early days and what was the vision that you had for the organization?
When I was called about the job and again, I'd never heard of Texas Public Policy Foundation. But Wendy Graham, who was chair at the time, Senator Phil Graham's wife, called me. We did not know each other. And said, would you be interested? And I said, well, tell me about it. And she said, well, it's a think tank. And I said, well, what's a think tank? Like, I didn't even know what a think tank was.
I think I asked you that question in my first interview.
When I interviewed with you, I think that's right. And I did a little research and I read that think tanks were places where scholarly people meet and they write white papers and books and sometimes give speeches. And that's what a think tank is. And I said, well, that's not going to change anything. I think the benefit of having come from a governor's office, which was back then very unusual, even our little think tank of 3 of us in 2003. Normally, think tanks back then were run by academics, and it was just an extension of academic research, on the now from the free market perspective, the economy, healthcare, education, et cetera. But back then, and I remember thinking, well, this is a waste of my time. I have no interest in running an organization that's just focused on writing white papers. Because I will tell you the percent chance of me having read one of those white papers while the governor's policy director was 0.0000%. So with...
No offense to people who write white papers.
No offense to people who write white. You have to have the white papers,
you
right?
Do. It's the foundation of everything.
That's the foundation of everything we do. It is the heart of everything we do.
That's right.
But in my opinion, it's only about 20% of what we should be doing. The other 80% is taking that white paper and turning it into real policy. Yeah. So I got really excited about the idea of TPPF. I wrote a business plan, which I think you still have in your file somewhere.
Yep.
And I'll never forget going to the board, and which was just a handful of people at the time who were a little unsure of what we were doing or supposed to be doing, and saying, okay, y'all, here's what I want to do. I want to create some policy centers. I want to hire people that know how to change things, former legislators, former elected officials from other places, bring them on the team. We always will do the white papers. That's very important. But use those white papers to arm them to go and actually change things for the better for Texas. I didn't realize then, and probably didn't for almost 5 years, that the opportunity not just to change Texas for the better, and ultimately the change is not for the sake of change. The change is to help people.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, that's all where my heart was. We knew that lower taxes, less government, deregulation, more opportunity helps all Texans, but it helps those with the least among us the most, those at the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder. So kind of rethinking the way, at the time I didn't realize this was going to be a paradigm shift across the movement. And that was for a lot of reasons, not just we did at TPPF, but my idea was you put it on paper, you create a plan, you hire the right people, and you go and you never look back. And that's sort of what I'm still doing today, 20 plus years later. And to kind of look back around to my initial thought, what we didn't realize then was that Texas would become a model for the country. And at that time in 2003, we weren't that much different from a New York or a Texas or not. It could have gone either way. And so to now see and understand, which I believe God's hand is on all this, but to see and understand what we did back then, and you were a part of that, you were like employee number 10 all those years ago, and to make a lot of mistakes, but never look back. Always change, adjust. Are we winning? Are we winning? Are we winning? How do we need to win even more for the people of our state? That's kind of ultimately been for me, taking TPPF in 2003, building it with you and others for 15 years, and then getting to be its biggest cheerleader when I went into the White House and continue what we did there, there for those 3 years.
Yeah. And it's just been remarkable. I still... I was employee like 10. I like to say 12 as an Aggie.
12, that's so right. I like it. I don't
know what the actual number is, but just looking back and seeing where TPF was then and now, I still can't believe it. And, as we're recording this, we'll be celebrating our 35th anniversary tonight. Yeah. We'll be celebrating you as our Sam Houston Award winner tonight. And looking back on what TPF has meant to Texas. But that hasn't always been easy. I think people outside of the state think, oh, Texas, it's so easy.
Yeah.
But running a conservative think tank, having worked for an elected official, but then being on the other outside of it, how did you manage sometimes maybe not always being aligned with friends, right?
Yeah.
And people, and how did you fight for the things that principally you believed in?
Yeah, it is first and most important thing is never compromise what we believe and what we're trying to do. But there's a way to be effective in that and not burn bridges that allow you to completely gut your effectiveness forever. And that was always the balance that we all on the outside are constantly working to achieve. Back 15 years ago, one of our key issues was a population plus inflation cap on the budget growth for the state. And at the time, people kind of laughed us out of their offices. I mean, we couldn't barely even get a committee hearing. I think it took us a couple sessions to get a committee hearing on that. Well, a decade plus later, it passes, and there's almost no nay votes. So, I mean, it passed almost unanimously, I think.
I think it was unanimous in the Senate and only had a couple against.
One or two, including Democrats. And so for me, the takeaway, and there was a lot of anxiety and stomach aching. I mean, several statewide elected officials tried to have me fired multiple times, as we all know.
I haven't had that yet.
I know.
I feel like it's
things
coming.
have changed a lot, though. Things have changed a lot.
There's days it feels like it's coming. But
yeah, well, that was back when everyone was sort of at the behest, I think. Now it's changed.
Yeah.
But it took us a while to get there. But ultimately, ensuring that we don't stray from what we believe in, but that we're always honest brokers and we're always respectful. Doesn't mean we can't disagree. And it doesn't mean in those disagreements there may be some that don't want to talk to you or try to fire you or call the Wall Street Journal and call you a liar, which has all happened by friends. But we're trying to save a country and save the last best hope for man on earth, to quote Ronald Reagan. And that's hard work, and it takes persistence, eternal vigilance. And but ultimately, we, TPPF, the movement, will be here long past any elected officials. And no offense to all of our friends in office, including my mother, who's now an incoming state legislator in Texas.
That's crazy.
At 77
I definitely want to
years
ask you
young.
about that later.
Yes. But all of those sort of disagreements are transitory. The ultimate righteous fight for freedom is forever. It just is. It's scriptural. So onward we go.
Amen. So in 2015, Donald Trump went down his escalator and entered the race for president and was one of, 17 folks.
Yes.
And few people thought he had a chance of winning. And is one of the most amazing. They've written lots of books about it. They will continue to write lots of books about that race. But came out and won the primary. And I remember you joining his economic advisory team and all that. What was that like? And what was it like entering kind of that Trump orbit? And what have you seen change in America based on the candidacy of Donald Trump?
Well, do you remember?
I remember very well, yes.
I got the call about being on candidate Trump's economic team. And up until that moment, which is 15, 17 years of work in public policy, I had never aligned with a candidate. Even our good friends like Rick Perry and Ted Cruz and Dan Patrick and all these amazing people, I had never put my name on a candidate's committee. And not that I didn't believe what they were doing, but I felt so strongly that to build the strongest Texas public policy foundation, it was extremely important to remain focused on the policy. And I could have. It's my First Amendment right to do whatever I want, but I just didn't feel like it was the right thing. Well, down the escalator comes Donald Trump, who's given a very low percent chance of winning, who's a man at that point I had never even met before. That's why I think God's hands on so much of this. And I get a call to join who is, according to everyone, except a handful of people, was destined to lose perhaps the largest loss margin in the history of recent elections. One of our closest friends obviously was telling us that multiples of times. And I'll never, we were sitting in this building up in the Henry conference room, and I pulled our team together, and I said, I'm inclined to do this because I just feel like it's the right thing to do. And I sincerely believe that if Donald Trump, who, by the way, I've never even met, has the right policy minds around him, and what we have proven in Texas is so good that if I can just get that to, and by the way, I do that with anybody, frankly. But I'll never forget the team was really concerned. the TPPF team, look, we have worked so hard, and Brooke, I think y'all were more concerned for me than yourselves or the organization. And so I said, I understand, and I'll take it into consideration. We'll pray a lot about it. But it didn't take long. I just knew it was the right thing to do. And so there we began the trajectory into Donald Trump world. And he won. I really believed he was going to win because I saw the rallies, even though the numbers didn't say. But I saw the people show up, just like last night. I know as we're taping it, your viewers will probably see this later, but last night in Long Island, New York, he had 20,000 people come. Every seat was taken to listen to him talk about policy for an hour and 45 minutes. Like this is a movement that 500 years from now, the historians are still going to be writing about. Yep. And so to help build that in my very small way, first in the last White House, and I think the policy achievements that were certainly at the top of the list for America, but second in building an America First Policy Institute based on Texas Public Policy Foundation to continue them building that movement nationally. And then, in 7 weeks we'll know, but I feel very confident that we will win the White House back and we'll be able to continue that work from both the outside and the inside, because I think the president will be prepared, President Trump, in a way that I know he was not the first time around, is incredibly encouraging, and I feel so blessed to have been a part of that.
So how did you become... obviously you got asked to be on the economic advisor of the candidate Trump, but then once you took office, you started going up there more. How did you start getting the attention of them so much that they wanted to then hire you away from us here at TPPF?
Well,
and I remember all those conversations too.
That was tough because I never planned to leave TPPF, as you know. Yeah. You and I are very similar. I've always felt to be called here with this organization for a time such as this to meet the moment, to continue the journey of the state of Texas to be the beacon of light for the world. And my heart is still there. Mm-hmm. But unlike during the years of George Bush, which is so interesting because Bush was a governor of Texas, and TPPF never got one call to go in to help. How do we advise? It's just interesting. Yeah. No, I'm not throwing any shade on the Bush years, but my goodness, the Trump team immediately reached out. And of course, they knew me because of the work, but more than that, they knew the work. Yep. And if they really wanted to achieve real deregulation and they really wanted to achieve real border security and all the things that were at the top of the list for Trump 1, I think that the people in charge knew. It helped that Vice President Pence was himself ran a think tank before he ran for public office in Indiana. It helped that the wonderful Kellyanne Conway was right there, and she knew us and knew me and knew our work. I'd gotten to know several of the family members through the process of the economic team when President Trump was a candidate. And so every time they call, you and I, or I and others would happily go up. That's our dream as public policy organizations, is how do we help make things better? And it was about a month into those meetings that I could tell they were about to start recruiting me to come in. And at the time, I had a 3rd grader, a 5th grader, a 6th grader, and an 8th grader, Lily, Anna, Jake, and Luke. And I thought, there's no way. No, thank you so much. But I will keep doing my day trips up as much as I can. But ultimately, we prayed a lot about it in my family and realized that maybe the country was calling and maybe this was God's plan. And everything, Greg, we had done here at TPPF, we could put to such good use for America. And that eventually changed my heart, my mind, and our family had an amazing adventure. My kids came into the White House almost every day, which I think was a little obnoxious to everybody, but kids are always around. Yeah. And Kellyanne has often said, in fact, recently on TV and in her book and at the convention, that President Trump never gets credit, but of our top staff, which is a very small group, 5 of us were working moms. 5. Yep. And between the 5 of us, we had 19 school-aged children. There's never been a White House, a West Wing, a C-suite that will ever, or at least to this point, it's ever been able to even come close to that. So it was an extremely family-friendly working mom friendly environment. And my committed 1 year when I was coming back to TPPF turned into 3 almost full years, year 2, year 3, year 4. And that 4th year, I had really focused on mapping out the second term agenda. And I was planning to stay at least for a little bit of the second term to ensure that President Trump was in the place where he needed to be to fulfill the promises he'd made to the American people.
Yeah. So obviously the election in 2020 didn't go the way you expected, the way many people expected it to go. How did you recover, and what were your thoughts after that didn't go the way, and how did you then take that into forming what is now America First Policy Institute?
November 3rd, everything looked great. We were up by 1 million votes in Pennsylvania. Which was the election day.
Yep.
I had Camp David reserved for November 10th through 12th. We had everyone alerted who knew we needed to be there, kind of our top senior team, but some key cabinet members as well, to really get started on the second term. And then November 4th, it began to slip away. November 5th, even more. November 6th, November 7th. And it was a tough time in that West Wing. The president, and I'm with him, sincerely believed that election had been taken from us. And you can argue how and why and what the circumstances were and what that looked like. But COVID had allowed some serious election breaches in Pennsylvania and some other states. And so right around Thanksgiving, kind of the days we were supposed to be at Camp David, we obviously didn't go. I started thinking, well, what's next? And a group of us started talking about President Trump's library, which is normally what you do, and thinking about transitioning to the next team. President Trump and others were still working hard, as we know, to try to prove the fraud so that we could potentially slow the certification down. And ultimately that didn't happen. But I've always been a stay on offense. That's my whole brain. Whether that's good or bad, I'm not sure. It's probably why I was mapping out the second term agenda in year 4 of term 2, because I'm like, we've got to stay on offense. And so as I started thinking about us leaving in the shadow of November 3rd, and people were so discouraged, and a lot of people thought, well, this was a nice moment in time.
Yeah.
Came down the escalator, had lots of amazing rallies, brought new people into the movement, changed the course of history for a country. We're finally able to pivot away from more government under both Republicans and Democrats, by the way. And how do we keep that going? And so that's when it occurred to me, well, and I was talking to some of our, key people in the White House, what's next? And someone said, well, we need a TPPF at the national level. And it wasn't me, by the way. It was someone else, but one of the senior team. And that's when I started talking to you and to others and building out a plan for January 21st of 2021, when we were originally going to launch. Then January 6th happened. And my concept of AFPI wasn't just the policy agenda. Perhaps more importantly, it was keeping the team together. I thought for the first time, at least in my lifetime, arguably Reagan, but that was, I was little then, that we had a team of people in the Trump White House that didn't care about their next job. They weren't worried about what K Street said. They didn't mind being eviscerated unfairly in the media. They just wanted to save America.
Yeah.
And to have survived and thrived in that scenario in those 4 years, by the end, were people that I wanted to be in the foxhole with forever, whatever that looked like. And so taking that second term agenda, layering on top of it a dozen cabinet members, almost 50 former White House top officials who all wanted to stay in the fight. They just didn't know how or why. And all of it, I said, well, I've done this before. We built an organization in Texas around the same kind of ideas with the same sort of patriots. And I know how to do this, right? I know what it means to raise money. I know what it means to have a HR office. I know what it means to hire the best people and give them the platform to go change the world, which is probably the one thing I'm pretty good at, is finding amazing people. And so I agreed to do it. January 6th happens. We lose a few people who think that being anywhere close to our legacy, the former president, the America First brand,
January 7th, it felt like the America First movement could be over, right?
That's right. I think a lot of people thought that. That was actually the first official meeting of a few of our board members and top people was the morning of January 7th. But I never doubted it, never, even for a minute. I had really top, even Trump people say, don't use the America First brand. It's dead. And I said, no, I don't believe that. It didn't even for a second in my heart or in my mind change anything that we wanted to do. In fact, it made me even stronger, maybe, and even more resolute that what we had set out to do between November 3rd, November 4th, 2020, and January 6th, 2021, and then the inauguration of Joe Biden, that it became even more important that we build this and do this. And now, of course, everyone's back on the team and wants to be a part of it, which is great. But I see this as a 100-year play, maybe more. We're about to celebrate America's 250th birthday. And I believe that this is perhaps this organization, America First, but in partnership with Texas Public Policy and other great partners out there, that we've really only just begun. We've figured out how to preserve freedom. And it's hard, and it's a battle. And there are days that are harder than others. But ultimately, as I mentioned, there's such joy in this work.
That's absolutely right. Well, and one of the things I always think about that has been your mantra since the day I met you is you have to be happy warriors about this work, right? Like it is an honor and a privilege to do it, but you also have to have kind of a stomach for the fight.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You can't be thin-skinned, and that's hard. For me, I feel like people that know me well would say fundamentally I'm a really nice person, and I really care so much about other people and helping other people and never think poorly of anybody. I trust everyone. The time in Washington opened my eyes a little bit, but I have not lost that love for people or love for the work or love for the opportunity to do so much good. And so, I'm all in. That may what that looks like will change. I'm 52. Hopefully, at least 30 or maybe 40 more years of fighting the good fight. And again, it'll look different. I'm not going to be doing what I'm doing right now when I'm 80. But
well, you say that. You
I
know.
Who knows? Who knows? President Trump and my
mom
look
at him. Yeah,
have
your
proven
mother.
all of us wrong on
right.
that. President Trump is unbelievable. I mean, watching him last night at that rally of 20,000 people. The mental acuity and the endurance that is required, this, to stand in front of a group of people for an hour and 45 minutes. And there's some telepromptering, but it's mostly riffing. He loves to go off script.
I want to know what insoles he has in his shoes. It's like, don't your feet hurt? A long time.
And he was like that in the White House.
Yeah.
He was the first one to work. He was the last one to bed. Not much sleeping in between. And it's just remarkable. I just so wish that the everyday American could know him the way that those of us who've worked closely with him know him. And, he can be a little, if he doesn't think things are going right, he's the first to tell you. If he doesn't think you're doing a good job, he's the first to fire you. But that's what America deserves. And so there's been so much written about how people don't like him or his personality. Like, if people could only see the real Donald Trump, it would change everyone's mind. Yeah. And I'm just so proud to call him a friend, a boss, a partner in the fight to save America. And I'm just so proud of him. It's remarkable to see what he's able to withstand for our country.
Yeah, well, a couple near assassination attempts that I think a lot of people saw who he was at his core, right? How he responded to being shot.
Yeah.
And most people would not have responded that way. And that showed, like, whatever you think about him, he is a fighter. And he is not gonna back down. And one of my favorite stories ever, this makes me think of working for you, especially when you're pregnant, because you're up at all these weird hours. Was Mark Meadows once told me a story of President Trump waking him up at like 2 a.m. and saying, hey, we got to do this and we got to do this. And then he called him again at like 6 a.m. and said, hey, how's it going? And he's like, no one else is awake.
In 4 hours, we made any progress. That pretty much sums it up.
Yeah.
I have always been told I move extremely quickly, and I understand that completely. But even I was shocked. I'd walk in with an amazing plan, deregulation. Sir, here's what we're going to do. Most administrations will probably take 2 years to get this to fruition. We figured out how to do it in 6 months. Here is my plan. Well, let's do it today, Brooke. Well, sir, we've got to talk to all these governors and we got to issue all these plans. No. We're walking into a cabinet meeting. It's a true story. I was briefing him on the project just to get I like the project, Brooke. You go keep working on it. Just doing a little 15-minute brief on the schedule. Cabinet's waiting right through the door. The president's Oval Office, his outer oval, and then there's a door that goes right into the cabinet room. And I'm sitting there standing in front of the Resolute desk. I have my whiteboards I always bring in with me to brief him. He's like, no, we're going to go in right now and let the cabinet know what we're doing. And on those whiteboards were some of the governors that we plan to partner with and their names and their states. And I said, well, sir, I haven't even talked. I want to make sure you like this idea before I started calling governors on your behalf. I love the idea. The governors will love it. Here we go. And the next thing I know, I've got the whiteboards. I'm following President Trump into the cabinet meeting with the entire cabinet sitting down. There's, at that point before COVID, there were 50 cameras, that had all come in. And I thought, well, here we go. This is Donald Trump world.
Looking at the camera like, sorry, Governor.
Exactly.
Sorry,
yes.
yeah.
Doug Holscher, who I still work with today, was out frantically calling all the governors. You're about to get named in a cabinet meeting. But there were 100 stories like that. And that's why we got so much done.
Yeah. You talk about how it took a little time to ramp up and figure that out. I think that's right. So looking forward to, if President Trump is reelected, which I know you hope it happens, what does a second term, obviously it's not consecutive, what does the second term look like? And what do you think will be accomplished for the American people? I think,
and speaking for myself, obviously, not speaking for President Trump or the campaign, but just looking at his Agenda 47 and his vision he has laid out. And of course, the mainstream media will never cover it. They won't give it a fair shake. They don't talk about it. But more economic prosperity, a secure border. Our very last trip in Trump 1 was about 3 days before we left. It was probably January 17th, maybe 18th of 2021. And we went to the border. We went down to McAllen, and that was his very last official trip as president. Most of the team had off-boarded at that time. I was one of the remaining few, so I traveled with him. And, of course, we were coming home, so I was happy to do that. And where we went, illegal border crossings had decreased 94% since we had taken office 4 years before. But just think about that. These are things that no one thought was possible. Energy independence, a secure border, an economy where everyone flourished, but especially those at the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder. The battle for healthcare transparency and lower drug prices. All of the accomplishments on the social side, religious freedom, more life, more focus on pro-life and saving unborn children's lives, judges' appointments, the Supreme Court. In 4 years, I would argue there was more done and more success compared to any president 4 or 8 years ever in the history of America. And so to take that record and then to now try to unwind all that has been done in the last 4 years, which I believe we can do, but numbers of between 14, 15, 20 million illegal aliens in America, that's a massive, massive issue. And how do you on day one, the president wants the largest deportation exercise in history. I believe we can do it, and I believe he will do it. And I know they're working on the plans to make sure that happens. But these are really difficult, vexing policy challenges. But he's up for it. And I think he'll have a team around him that will be up for it also. And I also think we have organizations like America First Policy, like Texas Public Policy Foundation. Now that we've really understood the opportunity and the ability and what a transformative, game-changing CEO he is for America, it gives organizations like ours that, again, nonpartisan, we'd be happy to do this for anybody. But, the other side's not calling us.
Take a call any moment from President Biden.
Exactly. Yes. But having the sort of the support and the depth of policy and people that are willing to step up to work to save America is really exciting. And you see it, Bobby Kennedy, Tulsi Gabbard, Elon Musk. These are not long-time conservative movement, Republican type people. But I think it's no longer Republican versus Democrat. It's the status quo versus the reformers.
Yep.
That's the way it is right now. And so what we can do to help with the reform side is what makes me excited.
Speaking of reform, the thing I'm most looking forward to as a regulatory reform guy is the Elon Musk commission that him and President Trump talked about. I was like, that would just be beautiful. Can't wait for that. Yeah. All right. Well, just a couple of quick questions left as we wrap up. Super difficult ones. But first, I wanted to hear, what was it like? Your mother, I love Helen Kerwin so much. Hurricane Helen, who I've known for so many years. But she ran for office and won her primary against an incumbent.
Yes.
You worked a lot on that campaign. What was that like?
We need a whole other podcast for this discussion.
Like 3 hours.
Exactly. I'll say three quick things. First, I was so proud of her. This is not her comfort zone. Mm-hmm. She does not like to speak to people in front of the. She is not.
We commiserate on that.
She's not a glad hander.
Please get up there.
Yeah, exactly. But she was amazing. So that's the first thing, and she won.
Yeah.
And no one worked harder, honestly, than she did. She went during early voting. She would go work the polls every day, and all early voting, and then she'd go knock doors at night in the dark. I mean, and she was amazing. That's the first thing. I was just so proud of her. The second thing is that we live in the greatest country in the history of the world, where my 77-year-old mother, who's basically been a full-time grandmother for 20 plus years and followed me around with a camera and, helping me with my kiddos, is now, I think, the oldest freshman state legislator in Texas history.
Yep.
And is going to make a big difference. I'm so proud of her.
They're going to have the oldest and the youngest.
The oldest and the youngest. That's right. Both on our side. That's exactly right. And then the third thing, it was an incredible, unexpected joy to be part of a door-knocking grassroots campaign, because all these years you and I have been, not that there's up here and down here, but we're up in the clouds, right? We're talking about policy and drafting legislation and what the right framing is and how you change hearts and minds. Well, you go door to door and you knock on real American, hardworking, I love Charlie Kirk. He said, the people that take a shower before work and a shower after work.
Yeah.
Those are our people. And so to get to knock on doors in Cleburne and Burleson and my hometown of Glen Rose, they didn't know who I was. They didn't know I worked for Donald Trump. They didn't know I was from the White House. It was just, this is my mom. She's amazing. She's a heck of an America First candidate. The person she's running against is a nice man, but a little bit of a rhino. Please go vote for her. And it was incredible. So I got to actually connect with real people that are working really hard and love this country. And they all turned out to vote for her. She won pretty significantly. So those are my three quick things on that.
Well, we love Hurricane Helen. When people would call me and ask me about her when she entered, I said, well, Brooke, right? And they're like, yeah. I was like, well, that's where she gets it from, right? Like, I was like, yes, like she will outwork anybody. I was like, I've seen her at work. She will outwork anybody. So watch out. All right. So last question, most important question. November 30th. Texas and A&M renew the rivalry. Yeah. How badly will A&M beat Texas?
This is the most important question. I believe, listen, it's going to be, it'll probably be a little closer, just like November 5th, than we would like or believe it should be. But I believe we win by 2 touchdowns. That's my call. It's Kyle Field.
I love it.
November 30th, a decade plus waiting for this moment. They just think they've got it all figured out here in Austin, but just wait.
The atmosphere is going to be insane.
It is going to be absolute craziness.
I have these Longhorns asking me for tickets. I was like, good luck.
Yeah, good luck. And by the way, since you're a Longhorn, no tickets for you. Even if I could give you a ticket. No.
There's a few I love so much. I'm like, oh, maybe. But
maybe.
Yeah, that's right.
No, it's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Well, Brooke, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for... Gosh, we've worked together for over 17 years now, which doesn't seem real.
Incredible.
But what you've done not only for TPPF, myself, but also for Texas. I think Texas would not be what it is. The country would not be what it is without you. So thank you for that. Because, as you said, it wasn't really what you'd planned to do, but you did it anyways. And I think that's a testament to who you are and your character. So thank you.
No, thank you. I don't deserve that credit, but I appreciate it. It's been an amazing partnership.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And thank you to all of you for watching this episode of The Arena with the wonderful Brooke Rollins. Look forward to seeing you on the next episode.